Happy National Wine Day, too. We're going to do a little wine tonight. So, cheers, everybody, from the wine tasting capital of my dining room. Due to the snowstorm that we've experienced, we're not open at Field and Main tonight, so I am going to do this from home. Who's joining us? Let's see. I opened this a few moments ago, and already it's got quite a lively nose. So Matthew Fitzsimmons is with us tonight. Hello, sir. How are you? Lorna's here. Hi. Trish, Andy, and Kathy. Awesome. Consistently joining us week to week. Kelly, cheers to you. Thank you. And Matthew has the wine tonight. Good. That's all the better. You're going to be able to play along this week with the actual wine in front of you, as opposed to just having to guess off of our comments. I'm excited about that. We'll see what your feedback brings this evening. Who else is with us this evening on this cold, chilly night? We didn't have as much snow as I expected in Warrenton. There was a call for a lot more here, but we just got this really fascinating icy rain. So love to you too, Christine. Thank you for joining us from Michigan. And Rob and Kathy are here tonight. The McCartys are with us too. Cheers, guys. Welcome. This is a unique one. It's darker in color. Kathy's with us tonight. Great. Hi, Kathy. Good evening to you. Jeff, hey, man. I was spending, Jeff and Kelly are with us this evening from Glen Manor. But Jeff, maybe you're watching us with a super feed on the side of an ice climb. I looked at some of your photos today and was completely jealous. Looks like you had a great time. So thank you for joining us, making some time in here. It'd be great. And you have the wine this week too. That's awesome. Okay, good. We're gonna definitely rely on your palate this evening. Jan's with us. And Erica's with us. I was doing some Facebook scrolling today, and Erica, looked like your kids made some crazy cool chocolates for Valentine's. So it looks like you had a wonderful Valentine's celebration. And you can join live as a result of the snow. That's great. Custom Bombs are here too. That's great too. Hi guys. So we're doing well. I have a little bit of an audience this evening. It may involve two cats strolling by at any point, a dog that potentially will bark, a sister-in-law, my wife, maybe some kids. Who knows? We might have some other additions to our program this evening as we're doing this, as I said, from my dining room. But let's get underway. We've got quite a few folks with us. Allison and David are here. Candy and Kevin are joining. That's perfect. It has been a long, strange week. Yes, I will give you that for sure. And so that's what Thursday night kind of represents, an opportunity to kick back. I've talked to a number of you who say that this starts sort of a weekend feeling, and it's a release at the end of four days of a work week, and then you're kind of looking forward to the weekend. You get a glass of red and a conversation and some touch points with some of the fellow tasting community, and then you have the remainder of the bottle for that evening perhaps, or for the rest of the weekend as you go into it. So yeah, this is a little richer red. This is, I mean, you would categorize this probably as a winter red, just by looking at the color. So what are we looking for here? What do we have? Susan's with us. Hey. Oh, and Erica, thank you for the volunteer of your children as a pastry chef. They look beautiful. The desserts were awesome. So I will contact you on that. Eric and Wendy are joining us. So Eric and Wendy, everybody else, what are we getting color-wise? What do you see? Is this ruby? Is it purple? Is it pretty intense in color? Is it opaque? Can you see through it? Is it where does it stand on our spectrum? Kathy noting that there isn't any leftover wine in her world. I get that. That makes some sense. But you have a lot of tastings you're doing throughout the week, so there's got to be a little bit of wine flowing at certain points. Although last week's Chardonnay didn't last very long. I took that home that evening and took care of it. So clear and ruby coming from Lorna. Yeah, Jan saying a deep cherry red. Yeah, ruby. There's a little bit of purple for you, Susan. I think it's partly my lighting and my table, but I see a little bit of purple too, kind of in the middle. It's more ruby around the rim and ruby total, but it has a faint purplish element to me here in my setting. not quite as bright as lights as we have at the restaurant. So a little bit of a different tasting environment. Medium ruby coming from Carrie. Yeah, it's clear, but it's deep to medium deep, right? So you can't really see through it easily, but you can. So medium's pretty much appropriate. Maybe a touch on the deeper side. This is to our question and to our discussion about Pinot Noir, right? Is this Pinot Noir right off the bat, just based on appearance? Is this something you'd think? We talked about Pinot Noir's characteristics being a little bit lighter, being a little bit on the ruby side of things, but a little bit more see-through. So is this right off the bat, are you thinking this type of wine is Pinot Noir? Chris, you're drinking a different wine already, and you have to finish up and move on to this one. That's good. You can two-fist it. You can have two glasses going at once, presuming, of course, you have two glasses. Kathy's saying no to the question, and I think that makes sense, right? So right off the bat, we think, we don't know, but we think that it is deeper than Pinot Noir, as Robert's pointing out. And that gives us another kind of benchmark to think about. So if it's not Pinot, it's probably not in the lighter end of the spectrum of grapes. It's probably more toward the medium and beyond spectrum, a more robust wine. So even just looking at it, that's what we know. Everybody's saying it's not Pinot. Good. So we can rule out Pinot Noir from the visual. Now maybe we taste it, maybe we smell it and we say maybe we should consider Pinot Noir, but right off the bat from the visual, we're not seeing that. So let's talk a little bit about the appearance of this wine further in terms of its body weight. I'm going to give you that right there. For those of you that don't have this wine or are not yet on it, Chris, I'm not sure that's showing. Yeah, you can see a little bit right there. Tears are forming, the legs. They're forming relatively quickly and they're moving quickly, but they maintain their integrity. So this has potentially kind of a medium weight to it, right? It's not looking like it has a bunch of alcohol weight. So, and Susan's kind of leading us into the nose. Yes, cherries and berries in the nose. And wood. Susan, expand on that, guys. Let's get to some wood too. But fruit-wise, sour licorice coming from candy. That's a cool note. Thank you. Skinny legs. A note from Eric. Yeah, they are skinny. They run fast, but they stay kind of consistent. Sour licorice. So a little bit of kind of a medicinal quality of fruit, candied fruit. Jammy cherry, licorice, vanilla coming from Lorna. Yes, I think that's a good descriptor. And Susan, you threw out some wood. What are you picking up for wood? So from the wood side of things, if you're smelling wood, you're smelling spices, you're smelling cedar she's picking up. Great. So that's an indication that we're probably dealing with some kind of French wood, French oak being part of the wine and its rearing. Kathy's picking up some red fruit, some licorice, and some violets. Yes. So a little bit of a floral note. This is a wine that has pretty pronounced, moderately pronounced, or not pronounced at all aroma. It's pretty expressive, right? So it has a good deal of expression. It's relatively ripe. So this fruit condition, we're talking a little bit about it being jammy. So that jammy element, right, would be indicative of this wine being a touch more ripe than not. So that would give us an indication of either a ripe vintage or perhaps a more warm climate. There's an earthy wood, still licorice coming from candy, some cinnamon spice. That's good, Jan. Picking up some of that cinnamon spice, giving you that idea was another indication of some wood and the toasting on that wood barrel in particular. Robert's picking up the same thing. Spices, cedar, maybe even some cinnamon. Some pepper, roasted pepper, like roasted red peppers, bell peppers, or are you talking, Kathy, about some black peppercorn? Not strong, but underlying. And potentially that pepper is important if you're picking up a little bit of pyrazine. Is that pyrazine an element, an indication perhaps of Cabernet Franc or of Cabernet Sauvignon or Carmenere, as we tasted from Chile, for example, having a lot of that pyrazine thing. Candy's faintly picking up a little bit of red roses. Red peppers. Okay, good. So not necessarily a pyrazine thing, but just kind of a cooked vegetable element here. And there's that sweet quality coming from that, so a riper element of a red pepper that's been roasted. Good. So we have a medium weight, maybe medium plus weight wine. Certainly the color is sort of in the medium realm. The legs were fast and skinny, but formed, so maybe more moderate. The aromas are giving us riper fruit, so a warmer climate. And maybe we're talking about a varietal somewhere in the middle realm like Merlot heading up to Syrah, or perhaps maybe even heading into another realm, but not necessarily very Cabernet oriented yet. The descriptors we're throwing out aren't particularly Cabernet. Black fruits and that pyrazine element and that structural quality, some of that leathery element. This is more primary fruit. When I first smelled it, it smelled a little bit like Beaujolais, and then it has gone deeper and more intense since. So Kathy's noting that she gets roasted red peppers for pyrazines. Okay, so you pick up red peppers for a pyrazine as an aroma. Just wines where it is in there, but mild. And that's the case here, perhaps. Okay, so maybe we're still talking a little bit about pyrazine. Pyrazine is that chemical compound that is related to that bell pepper, jalapeno pepper kind of quality in a wine that comes from that Cabernet family. And so this is something I'm not picking up a ton of, but guys, Kathy's noting there's a little tiny bit of it there potentially. So based on what we know visually and from the nose, where are we? Are we in, we're not in Burgundy, we're not talking about Pinot Noir. We're not necessarily on the West Coast, Sonoma Coast talking about Pinot Noir, but where would we be? Where should we start to be thinking about a moderate to warm climate that can get us a wine like this? South America was just offered by one of the peanut gallery in my dining room. That's cool. The black pepper elements coming through for Wendy, Eric's noting, or sharing via Wendy. So Allison's agreeing with the South America call, or at least questioning that idea. Black cherry too. Lorna's throwing out Italy. I think that's a possibility too. So if we're talking about Italy, we could be talking about Sangiovese, we could be talking about Nebbiolo, we could be talking about Montepulciano, we could be talking about a whole host of varietals. We could be talking about kind of a Valpolicella blend, Corvina blend. So let's dig in a little bit. Chile, South America, going for candy. John Brooks, hey man, maybe south of France. Yes, south of France could be giving us a blend. I think that's kind of what my secondary thought was as I went from Beaujolais quickly, literally one quick smell, that's all I did. And then it was the Beaujolais into, well, maybe we're talking about kind of a Côte d'Aron. Maybe there's a bit of Syrah Grenache kind of thing going on here. Kathy's in the old world. Erica's saying South America. And Allison was agreeing with South America. Cool. So if we're talking about South America, what grapes are we talking about? What should we be thinking about? Malbec. Absolutely. Another comment from the gallery. Cabernet Sauvignon, Malbec, Merlot, sure. Blends. Jeff's throwing out a little curve for us too. He says, reminding him of Eastern Europe. What in particular about this is Eastern Europe, Jeff? And what would you be thinking varietally wise? We could be talking about Shiraz with Syrah, right? So I think Candy's saying a Syrah, Merlot, Cab Sauv. Is that a blend you're throwing out there? Because there could be a blend in this, right? All right, let's taste this as the rest of you kind of venture back with some more comment, but begin. Does this live up on the palate to what it smelled like? Wow, it's a bit more tart. The fruit isn't as ripe. The acid's a little bit more pronounced in the back end, so Kathy's leaning Cab Franc. So Candy's saying blend, Syrah, Merlot, Cab Sauv blend. That'd be kind of neat. Eric, you're saying low acid? I'm still salivating. I gotta go medium, I think, on the acid. There's a little bit of tannin, but not a lot. Susan, you're picking up more tannin? Lorna's throwing out Dolcetto. That's cool. Dolcetto, a varietal from the Piedmont, the Piemonte in the northwestern part of Italy, has some cherry fruit, some darker fruit, could be raisiny fruit, could have a bit more tannin. It's a tannic grape, a little more structure. We could be considering Barbera. We could be considering from the Eastern European side, Jeff, you're talking about the acid and the fruitiness. Yeah, especially that tart quality. So it's ripe on the nose and then moves into a little bit more of a tart quality, and yeah, more medium, moderate tannin, moderate to medium minus kind of tannin for me. Kathy's saying the same thing. The acid here plays with the tannin in a way that makes you think perhaps there's a touch more tannin, but then there's not that grip, that kind of drying sensation. I would say this is relatively youthful. Susan's picking up some smokiness. Jeff's comment might be steering me, but Austria and Austrian reds could be a flair here. There's something about the tannin here that, as Robert's pointing out now too, that it fades quickly. It's sinewy, but it's not. It doesn't linger. And that could be a factor of perhaps the quality of grapes. Like maybe it's more a larger production of grapes. It doesn't quite have the same concentration. Maybe it's coming from a lower lying, flatter area. Cheers on the to-go container. Yes, skip cup. Thank you for calling me out on that, Jen. But what's coming on more now? What are you picking up? There's some more, that smokiness is coming on a bit more. And some of that tannin quality is a little bit astringent on the back end, which, thank you, Jeff, exactly the right timing. Maybe it's more grape tannin, not really wood tannin. Maybe it's a little stem, so partial whole cluster or some stem inclusion in the process of making the wine. So you would typically press the grapes, get the juice, put it back on the skins of the grapes to get the color and the extraction, and you would usually remove the grapes from their stems. And that when you don't, sometimes you get some of this kind of nice astringency that comes through that, like if you've chewed on a grape seed or grape seed or grape stem, you get that kind of astringent green element. That's the back end where it's less pyrazine for me. It's more about that skin. And you get that a lot of times with the production of Syrah. And Troy, yeah, I'm with you too. I smell the smoke, but I'm not picking it up on the palate. Kathy's noting too, it's a smoky tomato. Yeah, smoky tomato is really great. That smoke's on the nose. It's coming out a lot more for me, way more than it was in the beginning. Dark red berries, blackberry coming out a little bit more for Jen. It's opening, it's evolving a little bit. It's going from that kind of licoricey candied fruit to a jammy fruit, and now the fruit's still there, and it's hard for me to parse them out in the palate because there's two kind of experiences going on at the same time in the mouth. There's the fruit experience, which is kind of the front half, and then the lingering portion of the second half of the experience is about structure. It's about that acid and that astringency, which might be a little bit of tannin, grape tannin, might be some seed, stem element. Yeah. And John, I'm kind of with you. I like the idea of a Syrah Grenache-based blend. Allison's asking about that kind of lingering or that shorter finish. Shorter finish can be because of its youth, but it could also really be more likely probably just from the caliber of the fruit, how the fruit was handled, with the fruit presented in terms of quality. It's not a big knock. There's a certain series of wines, of course, that you don't want to necessarily linger. They're just enjoyable, they're quaffable. But I would say that this is giving us an indication this wine isn't probably a super pedigreed wine that needs a lot of time for aging, that is an elevated status. So if we're talking about a Grand Cru system, we're not thinking this wine's probably Grand Cru. It's much more like a Village or a basic entry-level wine. Super tight, super nice, but super nice to drink, and it's pleasant, as we pointed out, but it's not necessarily super complex. So in the world of Syrah Grenache-based blend, if we're in the Rhone, this is more Côte de Rhone than it is Châteauneuf du Pape. And that's cool. Molly and John and Itty, welcome. You missed, we're kind of on a medium weight red wine that is potentially South America, potentially Eastern Europe, potentially Southern France. We're not yet anywhere close on this. Troy's entreating you to just start drinking. Jan, Nebbiolo as a choice too. We were talking about Italy as well, and going northwestern Italy to Dolcetto or Nebbiolo. So Nebbiolo, I think we might get a little bit more lightness. Some people picked up a little bit of floral quality in the violet, but I think we get more rose element. The tannin might be a little bit stronger, but some of the other descriptors are dead on in terms of the cherry. You would get no pyrazine element whatsoever in Nebbiolo, so I don't know that I would go Nebbiolo on this call, but I'm liking more and more the Syrah call, but there's elements. There's a little bit of a blue fruit, blueberry kind of skin, blueberry juice element in there that brings me to Grenache always, and it's not always right, but it does. Kathy hates getting stuck on one wine region, and you're stuck with Cabernet Franc, and are you in the Loire Valley, or where are you stuck with the Cabernet Franc? Kathy's noting too that she's not getting the black pepper and the Syrah-based wine. Barbera. This has got, it could be. I mean, it could be Barbera. We could do, we could be dealing with a Barbera. Barbera, I think, wouldn't quite have the same. You know, I'm trying to parse my way through that. I'm not sure I can get away from Barbera necessarily. I think you'd have a good argument about Barbera. I think there's something about the tannin that just tells me it's not Barbera, and that astringency. Jeff, it absolutely could be a lesser known variety, thanks to Tony. It could be in a super obscure variety that we could be talking about Xenomavro from Greece that I have no idea about and have tasted perhaps once. So I'm not picking up like the blackberry element that's coming in now. I'm just not hitting the same level of pyrazine quality that I would expect from Chinon. Kathy's going to go Chinon and Loire Valley, or she's stuck there. If I was in France, I think I'd be more Côte de Rhone on this number. Robert's picking up a little bit of Syrah pepper there. Sylvia's saying, how about a Tuscan blend? That's cool. We could be talking about like a super Tuscan that it could have Syrah in it, and Merlot and Sangiovese. That would be interesting. Chianti from Troy. Troy, I'm not picking up, like there's that cherry element on Chianti that's just kind of a telltale, and this has some cherry quality to it, but it has more of that blackberry element too. And Susan, I love the idea of a Merlot blend maybe from Austria. We've done that before. I didn't see the label. It's not a tall bottle. I do have the bottle in front of me this week, so maybe. But Merlot blend from Tuscany could be there too. So we could be talking Syrah Merlot and have a Tuscan blend. Let's go back for a second to South America, because a number of people thought about South America first off. It could be Merlot from South America, right? It could be a Chilean Merlot. Kathy's putting out there already solidly Cabernet Franc, her reasoning, high acidity, medium plus tannins, raspberries and sour cherries, smoked tomato, roast red pepper. So a riper variation on Cabernet Franc from Chinon. The bottle shape matches, if that helps. But if we're going South America, Would we get the structure of a Cabernet blend? No, probably not. But it could be Syrah from South America. Syrah is not necessarily like indicative of a particular space in South America, but they grow it. If we're talking about Merlot, they certainly grow it, and we can be talking about that. Malbec. My sister-in-law likes all things Malbec. Is this Malbec? So no, she's not thinking that this is jumping right on the Malbec thing. Yeah. So there's that kind of sinewy tannin element. There's that astringency. There's a little bit of smokiness, definitely some smokiness. There's cranberry, raspberry, cherry, into blackberry on this. Anybody else have anything else to add about place? Let's recap this particular wine. It's not, so I mean, we can kind of knock out certain places. If it's Syrah, for example, we can think about France. We could think about the New World in terms of United States production. Chris ruined his palate on the previous wine, so he's no help. Jan's saying South American or Italian. But if it's Syrah, for example, could it be Australian Shiraz? It doesn't really present kind of that candied dark cherry blackberry element, maybe, but I think you would get a little bit more ripeness generally and a little bit more opulence. So France is certainly in the running there. If it's an Italian varietal, we don't think, maybe it's Sangiovese in a blend from Tuscany, or maybe we're talking about a Barbero Dolcetto. Doesn't really present kind of Amarone world or Valpolicella world, so that kind of raisiny element's not present here. I don't think we would go that route. Maybe Eastern European, maybe obscure varietal that we don't know. Chris can confirm for us that it's not Amarone, as that's what he had before. Yeah, if you're going from Amarone to this, really from Amarone to anything, you're going to have a difficult time transitioning. A Merlot Grenache blend from Susan. Oh, that's interesting. Where would you? I mean, you might get something like that in the Priorat of Spain. So you could have Merlot blended with Garnacha Negra or Grenache Noir. So we could potentially be playing Spain, but I don't know. There's some of this lightness I don't usually get from Spain. It's possible, I suppose, but John, Mr. Brooks is going to southern France because the acids are a bit unusual, and that's the interesting thing about this wine. It is complex. Puzzling, it's complex. It has the acid that is a little bit higher. It has some ripe fruit component. That's why it makes me think like it's multiple sites. So if I can use the Rhone, and that's kind of where I'm stuck. You had a riper site, you had an under-riper site, you had some stem inclusion on some of the Syrah fermentation, you had Grenache, and all of those brought together all these variety of different notes by way of the structure, but because the grapes are the same, you get the same fruit profile, just variations on it. Like how do you get tart fruit and ripe fruit in the nose? Maybe it's different sites that were blended together. And that's what's kind of leading me to the southern part of the Rhone, because we could do a Côte du Rhône that's sourced from a series of different places and blended. Yeah, I agree, Susan. There's always a thought in the back of your mind that Kathy's usually right. So if you go against Kathy, you're already one step behind. But yeah, I'm having trouble with the Loire, and I mean, from what I'm tasting, I would not peg this as Cabernet Franc from Loire, but I've been wrong before, and I'm prepared to be wrong again. So let's talk about age for a second, and then we'll kind of wrap our thoughts up on this particular wine region and varietal. It's relatively young, right? As you look at this grape, I gotta find the camera here. if you look at this, it's pretty much uniform color. There's no real variation on the rim. You can see a little bit of wateriness around the rim that would indicate more of a higher alcohol element, but I'm not picking up a ton of high alcohol on the palate here. So I would say this is probably in its more youthful phase, and in a youthful phase would, let's say, be 2 to 4, 2 to 5 years. Robert's thrown out 2019. Candy, you're saying Kevin's saying Chilean Merlot, and I think that's still a good guess too. We can definitely kind of work that. Some of that smokiness is what drew me more toward a Syrah element, but I'm not sure that you couldn't make a certain argument for Merlot in this. Troy's thrown 2018 out. Okay. Yeah, that's interesting. All right, so we're talking Cabernet Franc from Chinon for Kathy. We've got Chilean Merlot out there. We've got Southern French Syrah Grenache blend from John. We have an absolute It's Not Amarone from Chris. So, yeah, where are your flags, folks? Where do you want to plant them? I'm going to say 2018 Côte du Rhône. Syrah, Grenache. I'm not sure that's 100% correct, but Jen's throwing out that according to Google, summer of 2018 was the second hottest on record in France, and the country's national weather agency has confirmed temperatures in July and August averaging 2 degrees Celsius higher than average norms. Lorna's throwing out Italian blend 2018. David's throwing out a blend 19. Jeff saying very nice. Glad we got 2. I'm not sure if he means you got 2 of these bottles or if you've got 2 of the future bottles, but blend and Kathy. It is Chinon. Domaine Guérin, Chinon from 2018, 100% Cabernet Franc. This is pretty ripe. So look for pyrazine now. Do you see any pyrazine? Or smell any pyrazine and taste it? I still don't get a lot. So it's really not presenting itself as a typical Chinon, but Chinon is a region in the Loire Valley. This is also by way of its vintage 2018. So, and Chinon. All credit goes to Kathy, of course. All of us be damned if we go against that call. No, it's a little bit riper. And 18, per what was just noted, was a very ripe vintage. So a ripe vintage of this wine, you're getting a little bit less of that pyrazine. And that pyrazine, I should have noted earlier on, is an indication too of sort of an underripe character in that fruit. So you can get away from some of that pyrazine by having a ripe quality thing. And Susan, 100% agree. We could all switch this around and have Kathy just do this, and I'd be happy to sit back and just sip and lob comments. Star just said we could have guest tasters, and that's certainly something I'm considering going forward. We've had Tony in that hot seat before. Maybe we'll put Kathy in the seat and see how she does. But well done, Kathy. And it's a pretty neat wine. It has a growing kind of tannin character right now. It's changing. It's 35 minutes in, and it's definitely changing. So guest host from Jen. Yeah, Allison saying no. No, I mean, we'll continue to do this for sure, but it'd be fun to have some guest folks. We could definitely do a dual host event per Matthew's comment. I have had the privilege of definitely being on some panels with Kathy in the past, so that'd be fun. Cool wine. This wine won some awards. I was reading a note about it, and it's. I didn't know that we actually got this wine for this, but that's pretty cool. It's definitely a different expression than I'm used to, or that I've been exposed to for the Chinon. So Eric is calling for a competition of me versus Tony versus Kathy. I guess we could do that too. And yeah, Kathy, we did the Walsh blind tasting together, and that was a lot of fun. It's neat to do these tastings. You know what? I would be remiss to not have all of you in a blind tasting now. I've been, in fact, the Bonos came in last night and brought me a blind wine, and I'm ill-equipped to do it by myself now. I need the panel. I need the group of 40 or 50 people to help me get to a certain point. This one I got a little headstrong on and went with, but it's cool to try all these wines with you. So next week we'll continue to taste this. We'll go venture back eventually to the idea of shifting our tasting profile, but we'll maintain kind of the format that we're doing tonight and that we've done for most of the nights for a couple of weeks because the wines have been picked. And then we'll get back to sort of picking out a varietal or a characteristic or place and keeping this kind of interesting and changing it as we go through to continue to develop your palates and your understanding of wine and mine as well, as is evidenced by this evening's tasting. So cheers to everyone. I'll look forward to seeing you next week if I don't see you sooner at Field & Main. Take care.